The millionaire is surprised to see a black woman beggar caring for his child and heart. Richard Harding, mega rich, but a walking ghost since Sarah died. 2 years, 2 freaking years, and the Hamptons mansion still felt like a tomb. All that money, all those fancy cars, meant Jack's squat. His 5-year-old son, Ethan, was all that mattered. Ethan, with his sweet pale face and that damn heart condition. Board meeting? More like a blur of numbers that didn't add up to the one number that did. Ethan's heart rate. So he bolted early. Figured he'd find Mrs. Davison, the nurse, doing her thing. Meds, monitors, the whole 9 yards. But no, he walked into the living room and stopped dead. There was Aisha. Aisha, the weekend caregiver he'd barely registered hiring. Young, black, hair pulled back tight. And on the floor, a freaking teddy bear picnic. Ethan, usually looking like he'd seen a ghost, was actually giggling. Giggling. His cheeks were pink, a color Richard hadn't seen in ages. He was clutching some ratty old bear like it was made of gold. Aisha looked up, startled. A flash of something crossed her face. Then, bam! A smile. A real, warm smile that hit Richard like a punch to the gut. He was feeling a little down, she said, her voice like honey. So, we're having a teddy bear picnic. Richard was frozen. Sterile equipment. Strained faces. That's been Ethan's life. This was normal. Something he hadn't felt since Sarah. He watched, stunned, as Aisha somehow got Ethan to eat a spoonful of that awful pureed fruit. Mrs. Davison battled with that stuff for hours. Hours! But Aisha? Ethan just gobbled it down. Later, Aisha was heading out. Richard, without even thinking, offered her a ride. The drive was weird. She talked about her life, hustling, trying to make rent, how much she liked Ethan. Richard was hooked. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she had this light in her eyes, this optimism. Back at the house, after tucking Ethan in, Richard found something on the nightstand. A small bracelet, woven with bright colors. Aisha's. He picked it up, felt a flicker of something. Then, Mrs. Davison appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, worried. "Mr. Harding," she whispered, "I need to tell you something about Aisha. I recognized the agency she works for. They have a very questionable reputation. There have been rumors." Richard stared at the bracelet. The warmth he felt just minutes ago turned to ice. What the hell was going on? What kind of woman had he let into his son's life? What did she really want? Ei, antes de continuarmos com essa história incrível, preciso te fazer alerta importante. Muitos inscritos têm relatado que o YouTube removeu suas inscrições sem aviso. Dá só uma conferida rápida no botão vermelho aí embaixo para garantir que você ainda está inscrito no canal. Não quero que você perca nenhum conteúdo exclusivo que vem por aí. E já que você está aí, deixa aquele like poderoso que me ajuda muito com o algoritmo. Ah, e me conta nos comentários, de qual cidade você está assistindo. Adoro conhecer cada pessoa incrível que faz parte dessa comunidade. Sua participação faz toda a diferença. Vamos interagir. Richard stared at the bracelet. The warmth he felt just minutes ago turned to ice. What the hell was going on? What kind of woman had he let into his son's life? What did she really want? He practically ripped the bracelet in half, the cheap thread snapping. "What rumors, Mrs. Davison? Spit it out." Mrs. Davison. Davison wrung her hands. It's about the agency. They've been accused of placing caregivers who exploit vulnerable families, stealing even. Richard's blood ran cold. Stealing? He could replace anything she stole. But what if? What if she hurt Ethan? He didn't sleep. He paced. He replayed every moment with Aisha. The way she looked at Ethan, the genuine laughter. Was it all an act? He felt like a complete idiot. Morning came, gray and miserable. Ethan bounced into the kitchen, all smiles. Aisha said she'd make pancakes, the really good kind. Richard's stomach twisted. "She's not coming today, buddy. Mrs. Davison will make you pancakes." Ethan's face crumpled. "But Aisha promised." That was it. Richard couldn't do this to him. He couldn't let his fear win. He needed to know the truth. He grabbed his keys. "Come on, champ. Let's go get some pancakes." He drove straight to Aisha's address, the one on the agency form. It was a run-down apartment building in a part of town he usually avoided. His gut churned. This was a mistake. He knocked on her door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Still nothing. He was about to leave when he heard a faint whimper from inside. He didn't hesitate. He kicked the door open. The apartment was small, barely furnished, and there, on the floor, tied to a chair, was Aisha. Her face was bruised, her eyes wide with terror. "Richard?" she gasped. "Get out of here! They'll kill you too!" Before he could react, two men stormed out of the back room. Big guys, mean faces. One of them had a gun. "Well, well, well," the guy with the gun sneered. "Looks like we got ourselves a bonus." Richard felt a surge of pure adrenaline. He shoved Ethan behind him. "Who are you? What do you want?" "We want what's ours," the guy said, his eyes glinting. "And she knows where it is." He gestured to Aisha. She was getting close. Aisha was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play coy with us," the guy growled. "The necklace, Aisha. Where is it?" Necklace? What necklace? Richard was completely lost. Then Ethan tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy," he whispered, "Aisha gave me a necklace, a shiny one. She said it was magic." Richard's blood turned to ice. He looked at Ethan, then back at the men. The guy with the gun was grinning. "Bingo," he said. "Looks like the kid knows more than you think." He took a step closer. "Now, little man, tell us where the necklace is, and don't lie to us." Ethan, scared, but defiant, pointed to the ratty teddy bear he'd been clutching since yesterday. It's inside Mr. Snuggles." The guy with the gun laughed. A cold, cruel laugh. "Well, ain't that sweet? Looks like we just hit the jackpot." He reached for the teddy bear. That's when Richard saw it. The glint of metal hidden under Ethan's blanket. A small, antique-looking locket. He'd seen it before. A lifetime ago. Sarah used to wear it. His late wife. But Sarah had been buried with it. He'd seen it before. A lifetime ago. Sarah used to wear it. His late wife. But Sarah had been buried with it. The air in the room thickened, a suffocating mix of fear and disbelief. He stared at the locket, then back at Ethan, his mind racing. Sarah's locket. How? The guy with the gun hadn't noticed Richard's shock. He was focused on the teddy bear. He snatched it from Ethan, ripping it open with a savage grin. He pulled out a delicate, intricately carved silver necklace. It gleamed under the dim light. "Bingo," he repeated, holding the necklace aloft. "This little beauty is worth more than you can imagine." He turned to Aisha. "Now, sweetheart, where's the rest of it?" Aisha shook her head, tears still streaming down her face. "I told you! I don't know! I swear!" The guy backhanded her. Hard. Aisha cried out. Richard roared. Something snapped inside him. He lunged forward, knocking the guy off balance. The gun went flying. It skidded across the floor, landing near Ethan. "Ethan, stay back!" Richard yelled, grappling with the attacker. He was fueled by pure rage, grief, and a desperate need to protect his son. The other guy jumped into the fray, throwing punches. Richard fought back, but he was outnumbered, outmatched. He felt a sharp pain in his side, then another. Suddenly, a high-pitched scream pierced the air. It was Ethan. Richard's blood ran cold. He twisted around and saw Ethan standing frozen, the gun clutched in his small hands. "Daddy," he cried, his voice trembling. "I don't want them to hurt you." Richard's heart lurched. "Ethan, no. Put the gun down, buddy. It's dangerous." But it was too late. Ethan, terrified and desperate, pointed the gun. The gun fired, but it wasn't aimed at the attackers. It was aimed at Aisha. Aisha gasped, her eyes widening in shock. She clutched her chest, a crimson stain blooming on her shirt. She slumped to the floor, her eyes fixed on Richard. I didn't," she whispered, her voice fading. Richard stared in horror. Ethan, wide-eyed and shaking, dropped the gun. He looked from his father to Aisha, his face crumpling. "Daddy, what did I do?" Richard didn't answer. He couldn't. He rushed to Aisha, cradling her in his arms. Her eyes were glazed, her breath shallow. "Aisha, stay with me, please!" But it was no use. Her body went limp, her eyes closed. She was gone. And then Mrs. Davison stepped into the apartment, a cold, almost satisfied look on her face. She pointed a small silver pen at Aisha's body. "She wasn't who you thought she was, Richard. And neither was Sarah. They both knew too much. She wasn't who you thought she was, Richard. And neither was Sarah. They both knew too much." The words hung in the air, heavier than the gun smoke. Mrs. Davison's face was cold, almost gleeful. Richard couldn't breathe. Sarah? What the hell was she talking about? Ethan started to cry, a high-pitched, heart-wrenching wail. Richard pulled him close, shielding him from the horror. He looked down at Aisha, her eyes still open, staring at nothing. He didn't even register the two goons slipping out the back. Didn't care. All he saw was Aisha, and then Ethan, and then Mrs. Davison, standing there like some kind of puppet master. "What did you do?" He finally choked out, his voice raw. Mrs. Davison just smiled, a slow, chilling smile. "I protected you, Richard, from the truth." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver object. It glinted in the light, a locket, just like the one Ethan had pulled from the teddy bear. Sarah found out, she continued, her voice smooth, almost conversational. She found out about the family business. She was going to leave you, take Ethan. I couldn't let that happen. Richard's head was spinning. Family business? Sarah leaving? It didn't make any sense. You're crazy, he whispered, but even as he said it, a cold dread crept into his heart. He looked at Ethan, his face streaked with tears. He'd always wondered about the source of the Harding family fortune. Rumors, whispers. He'd always dismissed them. Crazy? Mrs. Davison laughed. No, Richard. Practical. Sarah threatened everything. And then Aisha. She was getting too close, asking too many questions. About the locket, about Sarah's death. She had to be stopped. She took a step closer, her eyes fixed on Ethan. He's a Harding, after all. He deserves to know his legacy. Legacy? What kind? Of legacy involved murder and lies. Richard felt a surge of protectiveness. He wouldn't let her poison Ethan with her twisted version of reality. Get away from him, he growled, rising to his feet. Mrs. Davison didn't flinch. It's too late, Richard. He already knows. She nodded towards Ethan. The boy was staring at her, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with understanding. Ethan, Richard asked, his voice trembling. What does she mean? Ethan looked up at his father, his face pale. He opened his mouth to speak, and what came out wasn't the voice of a 5-year-old. It was deeper, older, somehow knowing. She's right, Dad, Ethan said, his voice chillingly calm. It's time I knew the truth about the family, and about what I am. He looked at Mrs. Davison, and a flicker of something passed between them. A knowing look, a shared secret. Then Ethan smiled, a cold, calculating smile that Richard had never seen before. After all, Ethan continued, still with that unnervingly adult voice, blood is thicker than water, and Harding blood is the thickest of all. After all, Ethan continued, still with that unnervingly adult voice, blood is thicker than water, and Harding blood is the thickest of all. Richard stared, dumbfounded. Ethan? His sweet little Ethan was gone, replaced by this thing. Mrs. Davison was beaming. See, Richard, he understands. He's one of us. One of you? Richard spat. What the hell is going on? Suddenly, the apartment door burst open. Not with a kick this time, more like a controlled entry. A woman stood there, tall, imposing, dressed in a sharp black suit. She looked familiar. Well, 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 she said, her voice smooth and dangerous. Looks like you've made quite a mess, Agnes. She glanced at Mrs. Davison with disdain. Eleanor, Mrs. Davison, Agnes said, her face paling. What are you doing here? Cleaning up, Eleanor replied, her eyes cold. She nodded to a couple of men who followed her in. They were big, even bigger than the goons who'd already fled. Who are you? Richard demanded, trying to shield Ethan. Eleanor ignored him. Agnes, you know the rules. No unauthorized activations, especially not with the heir. He was ready, Agnes protested, gesturing to Ethan. He needed to know. Eleanor sighed. The council will not be pleased. This jeopardizes everything. She turned her attention to Richard. I'm Eleanor Harding, and I'm here to explain things. Starting with the fact that Ethan isn't exactly who you think he is. Richard's head was swimming. Another Harding? What council? He's my son, he shouted. Eleanor's smile was chilling. Biologically, perhaps, but Ethan is much more than just your son, Richard. He's a vessel, a carrier. She took a step closer to Ethan, and the boy didn't flinch. Instead, it was a seal. It's just been broken. Suddenly, Ethan gasped. He clutched his chest, his face contorting in pain. He fell to his knees, writhing. "Ethan!" Richard cried, reaching for him, but Eleanor stopped him. "Don't touch him! You can't help him now!" Ethan's body began to convulse. His skin turned pale, almost translucent. And then, his eyes. They changed. The innocent blue faded, replaced by a burning crimson red. He looked up at Richard, and a voice, ancient and terrifying, echoed through the small apartment. Finally, the voice boomed, "I am free." Richard stumbled back, his mind reeling. He looked at Ethan, or whatever it was now, and a horrifying realization dawned on him. Ethan wasn't just a Harding. He was something else. Something far, far worse. Eleanor smiled. "Welcome back, grandfather." Grandfather? Richard's blood turned to ice. He knew that name. It was his own grandfather. The man who built the Harding Empire. The man who died how many years ago? Ethan, or grandfather, rose to his feet, his red eyes burning into Richard's soul. "It's been too long," he said, his voice a monstrous echo. "But now it's time to reclaim what is rightfully mine." He looked directly at Richard, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Starting with you." Richard felt a sharp pain in his chest, like his heart was about to explode. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. What are you doing?" he managed to choke out. Grandfather, in Ethan's body, just laughed. A cold, heartless laugh. "Family business, Richard. Remember? And blood is thicker than water." He looked down at Richard, his eyes filled with contempt. "Prepare to join your ancestors. Prepare to join your ancestors." The world tilted. Everything went blurry. He tasted blood. Was this it? Was this how it ended? Then a voice, familiar, soothing. "Richard, Richard, can you hear me?" He blinked, tried to focus. Above him, a face. Another face. Sarah? But Sarah was dead, wasn't she? "Sarah?" he croaked, his voice a rusty whisper. Her eyes were full of worry. "Yes, darling, it's me. You're safe now. You're with me." He looked around. The run-down apartment was gone. Eleanor, Agnes, grandfather Ethan, all gone. He was in a bright, airy room. White walls, soft light. A hospital room? What happened?" he mumbled, trying to sit up. Sarah gently pushed him back down. "You collapsed, sweetheart. At the house. Mrs. Davison called 911. You were having a massive heart attack." "Heart attack? But what about the demon grandfather? The locket? Aisha?" "Aisha," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She's—" Sarah's face clouded over. "Who's Aisha, Richard? You've been saying that name ever since you woke up. Is she someone from work?" "Work? What about everything? Was it all a dream? A hallucination brought on by a heart attack?" Then he looked down, and his blood ran cold. On his wrist, a bracelet, woven with bright colors. Aisha's bracelet. He ripped it off, his fingers clumsy with panic. This is real. It happened. Sarah's eyes widened. Richard, you're scaring me. What are you talking about? He looked at her beautiful, concerned face, and a wave of confusion washed over him. She was here. She was alive. But how? Sarah, he said, his voice shaking. You were buried with a locket, a silver locket. Sarah frowned. A locket? Richard, I never owned a locket. You must be mistaken. Mistaken? But he remembered it so clearly. The locket, the funeral, the years of grief. Then who was buried in your grave? He asked. The question barely a whisper. Sarah squeezed his hand, her eyes filled with love. Darling, don't. You remember? I was cremated. There's no grave. The room spun. Nothing made sense. Sarah was alive, but she didn't remember the locket. Aisha was somewhere, and a demon inhabited his son's body. Or was any of it real? A nurse walked in, smiling brightly. Oh, Mr. Harding, you're awake. That's wonderful. Dr. Mallory will be so pleased. Dr. Mallory? That name. It sparked something in his memory. A face. A voice. Dr. Mallory, he said slowly. He treated Sarah. Before she died. Sarah's grip on his hand tightened. Yes, he did. He's a wonderful doctor. He saved my life. Saved your life? Richard repeated, his voice barely audible. But you died in a car accident years ago. Sarah's face paled. Richard, what are you saying? I've never been in a car accident. I've been right here with you for the past 20 years. 20 years? But Ethan was only 5. The nurse smiled nervously. Mr. Harding, perhaps you're still a little confused. You've been through a lot. Why don't I go get Dr. Mallory? He can explain everything. She hurried out of the room, leaving Richard alone with Sarah. He stared at her, his mind racing. 20 years? A life that didn't exist? A son. Possessed by a demon grandfather. Then Sarah reached out and stroked his hair, her touch gentle, loving. It's okay, Richard, she whispered. Everything's going to be all right. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you. Her words were meant to be comforting, but they sent a shiver down his spine. There was something in her eyes, a strange, unsettling calmness. Sarah, he said, his voice trembling, what's going on? She just smiled, a slow, chilling smile. Don't worry, darling, she said softly. Soon you'll remember everything, all the things you're supposed to forget. And then we can finally be together, just like it was always meant to be. And as she said those words, Richard saw a fleeting image in her eyes, an image of a silver locket, an image of a grave, and an image of Eleanor Harding standing behind her, a knowing smile on her face. The air grew cold. He knew it. He knew it all was a lie. He was trapped again. It wasn't a heart attack, and Sarah wasn't Sarah. Who are you? He choked. Sarah's smile widened. I'm your loving wife, Richard. I always will be. She pulled a syringe from her pocket and approached him. You're going to sleep now. And you're going to sleep now. Richard fought. God, he fought. But the heart attack, or whatever it was, had left him weak. He tried to wrestle the syringe away, but Sarah, or it, was too strong. Her eyes were cold, empty, a machine. He felt the prick of the needle in his arm, a burning sensation. The room started to spin again. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. What is that?" he gasped, his vision blurring. Sarah smiled, a sickeningly sweet smile. "Just a little something to help you. Relax, darling. You've been under so much stress." He felt his eyelids getting heavy. He was losing consciousness. He had to fight. For Ethan, for himself. But it was no use. The darkness was closing in. As he slipped away, he saw a figure standing in the doorway. Eleanor Harding, watching, smiling, and then nothing. He woke up, again. But this time, it was different. He wasn't in a hospital room. He wasn't in the rundown apartment. He was somewhere else entirely. It was dark, cold. He could hear the sound of dripping water. He was lying on a cold, hard surface. Stone? He sat up, his head throbbing. He looked around. He was in a dungeon? A medieval dungeon with stone walls, iron bars, and flickering torches. How did he get here? What was going on? Then he saw her, Sarah. She was standing in a corner, her back to him. She was wearing a long black dress. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked different, older, more severe. "Sarah," he said, his voice hoarse, "where are we?" She turned around. Her eyes were still cold, empty, but there was something else there too. A flicker of amusement? "Welcome, Richard," she said, her voice low and smooth. "Welcome to your new home." He stared at her, his mind reeling. "What is this? What's happening?" She smiled, a cruel, knowing smile. "You don't remember," she said, "the family business, the council, our legacy?" He shook his head. "No, I don't understand." She sighed. "Oh, Richard, you always were so resistant. But don't worry, you'll remember, in time." She took a step closer to him, her eyes fixed on his. "After all," she said, her voice a chilling whisper, "blood is thicker than water." Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, imposing, dressed in a long black robe. Eleanor Harding. She walked over to Sarah and placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's awake?" she said, her voice cold. Sarah nodded. "Yes, but he doesn't remember anything, yet." Eleanor sighed. "Well, that's to be expected. The serum takes time, but he'll come around. Eventually." She turned to Richard, her eyes filled with a chilling sort of pity. "Richard," she said, her voice smooth, "I know this is all very confusing, but trust me, everything we're doing, it's for your own good." His own good? What could possibly be good about being locked in a dungeon by his dead wife and a mysterious woman who claimed to be part of some kind of secret society? "What do you want from me?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Eleanor just smiled. "We want you to remember, Richard," she said. "We want you to embrace your destiny. We want you to become who you were always meant to be." She paused, her eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "We want you to become a Harding." Then Sarah stepped forward. She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small and silver. A locket. She opened it. Inside, a picture. A picture of Richard, but not the Richard he knew. A Richard with cold, calculating eyes, a Richard who looked evil. "This," Sarah said, holding the locket out to him, "is who you really are, Richard. This is who you will become." He stared at the picture, his heart pounding in his chest. It couldn't be true. He wasn't like that. He wasn't evil. But as he looked at the picture, something shifted in his mind. A memory, a feeling, a darkness he had never known was there. And then he heard a voice in his head, a voice that was both familiar and foreign. "Welcome home, Richard," the voice said. "We've been waiting for you." His head exploded in pain. He screamed. He clutched his head, trying to block out the voice. But it was no use. The voice was getting louder, stronger. And then he knew. He remembered everything. The family business, the council, the legacy, the darkness. He was a Harding. And he was evil. He looked at Sarah and Eleanor, and a smile spread across his face. A cold, calculating smile. "I remember," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. "I remember everything." Eleanor and Sarah exchanged a look of triumph. "Good," Eleanor said. "Then let's get started. There's much to be done." She turned and walked towards the shadows, beckoning him to follow. And as Richard followed her, he knew that his life would never be the same. He was no longer Richard Harding, loving father. He was something else entirely. He was a monster, and he was finally home. But then, as they walked deeper into the dungeon, a small, almost imperceptible sound reached his ears. A whimper. He stopped. He turned. And there, hidden behind a stack of crates, he saw him. Ethan, his son, bound and gagged, his eyes wide with terror. Ethan was alive, and as Richard looked at his son, a flicker of something good, something pure flickered in his heart. He wasn't completely lost, not yet. He looked at Eleanor and Sarah, and the smile on his face faded. "What are you doing with my son?" he demanded, his voice filled with rage. Eleanor just laughed. "He's bait, Richard," she said. "Bait to lure out the others." "The others?" he said, confused. "The ones who escaped," Sarah said, her voice cold. "The ones who know too much." "You mean Aisha?" he whispered. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Yes, and anyone else who might try to interfere with our plans." Richard looked at Ethan, then back at Eleanor and Sarah. "You're going to use my son as bait?" he said, his voice trembling with fury. "It's for the greater good, Richard," Eleanor said, her voice calm. "Don't let your sentimentality cloud your judgment." But it was too late. The good in him, the love for his son, had been awakened. He couldn't do it. He wouldn't let them hurt Ethan. He turned to Eleanor and Sarah, his eyes blazing with defiance. "I won't let you do this," he said, his voice filled with steel. Eleanor's smile vanished. Her eyes turned cold and hard. "You're making a mistake, Richard," she said, her voice dangerous. "Maybe I am," he said, "but I'm not going to let you hurt my son." And then he attacked. He lunged at Eleanor, knocking her off balance. She stumbled back, surprise flashing across her face. Sarah gasped, a hand flying to her mouth. Richard didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ethan, yanking him free from the ropes. "Run, buddy, Run and hide." Ethan, still dazed, hesitated for a split second, then bolted. Richard watched him go, relief flooding him, before turning back to face the two women. Eleanor was furious. "You idiot! You've ruined everything." "Maybe." Slowly, Richard snarled. "But I won't let you hurt my son." Sarah stepped forward, the syringe in her hand. "It's too late, Richard. You can't stop us." He dodged her, kicking the syringe out of her hand. It shattered against the stone wall. He grabbed a torch, brandishing it like a weapon. "Stay away from me! Stay away from my son!" He backed away, keeping them at bay with the torch. He had to find Ethan. He had to get them out of here. But then a voice, a familiar voice. "Daddy?" Richard froze. He turned around. Ethan was standing in the doorway. But it wasn't Ethan. Not really. His eyes were glowing red. "Grandfather?" Richard whispered, his blood turning to ice. Ethan, grandfather, smiled. A cold, cruel smile. "Hello, father," he said, his voice a monstrous echo. "Did you really think you could protect him from me?" Richard stared in horror. "Ethan, what? How?" "Eleanor explained everything," grandfather said. "About our legacy, about what I am, and about what he is." He pointed at Richard. Richard didn't understand. What was he talking about? "He's a vessel, father," grandfather said. "Just like me, a carrier." Suddenly, Eleanor spoke. "Richard, it's time you knew the truth. Ethan isn't your son, he's your brother." Richard stared at her, dumbfounded. "What?" Eleanor nodded. "It's true. Sarah, she wasn't your wife. She was your mother. And Ethan, he's your younger brother, reincarnated." Richard's world tilted. Nothing made sense anymore. Sarah was his mother? Ethan was his brother? "It's a long story," Eleanor continued. "One that you'll understand soon enough. But the important thing is, Ethan is the key. He's the vessel for our family's power. And you, Richard, you're here to protect him." She took a step closer to him, her eyes gleaming. "Embrace your destiny, Richard. Embrace your family. Embrace the power that is rightfully yours." Richard looked at Ethan, grandfather, and then back at Eleanor. He was caught between two worlds, two realities. He didn't know what to believe. But then he saw Ethan, grandfather, smile. A knowing smile. A smile that said he knew something Richard didn't. And in that moment, Richard understood. It wasn't about protecting Ethan. It was about becoming Ethan. It was about giving himself over to the darkness. He looked at Eleanor, and a smile spread across his face. A cold, calculating smile. "I understand," he said, his voice a chilling whisper. "I understand everything." Eleanor smiled back. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." She reached out her hand, and Richard took it. He turned to look at Ethan, grandfather, one last time. And then a strange electric feeling surged through his body. He gasped, his eyes widening in shock. He felt his mind slipping away. He felt himself losing control. And then he wasn't Richard anymore. He was something else. He was Ethan. And he knew exactly what he had to do. He was Ethan, and he knew exactly what he had to do. Eleanor smiled back. "Good," she said. "Then let's begin." She reached out her hand, and Richard took it. He turned to look at Ethan, grandfather, one last time, and then a strange electric feeling surged through his body. He gasped, his eyes widening in shock. He felt his mind slipping away. He felt himself losing control. And then, he wasn't Richard anymore. He was something else. He was Ethan, and he knew exactly what he had to do. The first thing was getting out of this dungeon, and then he'd protect his dad from them. He took Eleanor's hand, felt the power surge. It was amazing, like a shot of pure energy right into his soul. Grandfather was gone, faded. He was in control. "I'm ready," he said, his voice clear, his own voice, not that creepy adult thing. Eleanor beamed. "Excellent! Let's go, Ethan! We have much to teach you." She started to lead him away, but he didn't move. "What's wrong, Ethan?" Eleanor asked, her smile faltering. He looked at his dad, really looked at him, saw the confusion in his eyes, the fear, the love, and then he knew. He couldn't do this. He couldn't betray his dad, not for power, not for anything. He let go of Eleanor's hand. "I'm not going with you," he said, his voice firm. Eleanor's face turned hard. "What did you say?" "I said, I'm not going with you. I'm staying with my dad." He walked over to Richard, took his hand. "Come on, Dad, let's get out of here." Richard stared at him, his mouth agape. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Eleanor demanded. "You don't understand. This is your destiny. This is who you were meant to be." Ethan shook his head. "No, my destiny is to be with my dad, and that's all that matters." He looked at Eleanor, his eyes filled with defiance. "I don't want your power. I don't want your family. I just want my dad." Eleanor's face was a mask of rage. "You're a fool, Ethan. You're throwing everything away." "Maybe I am," Ethan said, "but I don't care. My dad is more important than anything." He tugged on Richard's hand. "Come on, Dad, let's go." And then something incredible happened. Richard squeezed his hand back. A tear rolled down Eleanor's cheek. The first real emotion Richard had seen from her. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He wasn't supposed to choose. "But here's the thing, Eleanor," Ethan began, his voice suddenly deeper, older, resonating with a power Richard had never imagined. "I wasn't supposed to exist at all." The entire dungeon trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Torches flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced like demons across the stone walls. "I am not just Ethan, or grandfather, or a Harding," the voice continued. "No longer belonging entirely to a child, but something far more ancient and terrible. I am the mistake you never saw coming." The ground cracked. Eleanor and Sarah stumbled backwards, terror etched across their faces. "I am the balance," the voice boomed. "The one who will end this twisted game once and for all." And as the dungeon began to collapse around them, Richard realized with horrifying clarity, Ethan wasn't choosing sides. He was choosing to destroy them all. But who or what was truly speaking through him? What weapon had they unknowingly created? The whole dungeon was coming down, rocks falling, the ground shaking. Crazy. Eleanor and Sarah, they were screaming, trying to get away, but there was nowhere to go. Ethan, this thing that was Ethan, was just standing there, calm, like he was watching a movie. He wasn't my son anymore. Not really. He was something else. Something powerful. Something scary. "Ethan," I yelled. But he didn't even look at me. He was focused on Eleanor and Sarah. "This ends now," he said, his voice echoing through the crumbling dungeon. And then, boom, the whole place just collapsed. Darkness. Silence. I don't know how long I was out. When I woke up, I was lying on the ground. Everything was gone. The dungeon, Eleanor, Sarah, Ethan, just gone. I got up, shaky. I looked around. Nothing. Just rocks and dust. It was over. Or was it? I started walking, just putting one foot in front of the other. I had to find Ethan. Had to make sure he was okay. I walked for hours, days maybe. I lost track of time. I was just searching. Then I saw him. He was sitting by a river, skipping stones. He looked normal, like my Ethan again. "Ethan," I said, my voice trembling. He looked up. He smiled, a real smile. "Hey, Dad," he said. I ran to him, hugged him tight. "Ethan, you're okay. What happened? Where are they?" He shrugged. "They're gone, Dad. It's over." "But what about you? What about everything?" He looked at me, his eyes sad. "I don't know, Dad. I don't remember much. Just darkness. And then, nothing." I held him close. He was back. My Ethan was back. That's all that mattered. We walked away from that place. We started over. New town, new life. I never told him about the Hardings, about the demon, about any of it. I just wanted him to be a kid, a normal kid. But sometimes I'd catch him looking at me, and I'd see it in his eyes, a flicker of something dark, something knowing, and I'd wonder, was it really over? Or was it just sleeping, waiting to wake up again? And what did Eleanor mean when she said he needed to lure the others? Who are these others? What is their purpose? Don't wait another second. The story isn't over yet. You just don't know it. This is the moment. You need to subscribe now to avoid missing upcoming exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to fuel the algorithm and ensure this channel survives. Inundate the comment section with your reactions and theories about this insane ending. Share this video instantaneously with at least 5 friends who desperately need to experience this finale. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel with these actions. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Get to it.